Thank you, everybody. I've been looking very much forward to being here today to present Ascelia Pharma to all of you. I know some of you from before, and some of you are new to the Ascelia story. In Ascelia Pharma, we are developing drugs for the treatment of patients living with cancer. We're focusing on segments of the cancer universe, if you will, on orphan cancer types. So we're an orphan oncology company with a late-stage pipeline. I hope after this presentation that you will share my passion, share my excitement for what we do and how we help doctors make better treatment decisions for patients. So we do that by developing our two lead assets, Mangoral and Oncoral. Mangoral, we're preparing the phase 3 clinical study, which is the final development stage before regulatory approval and making the product accessible to patients. It's a novel imaging drug, so it's given to patients before they go into an MRI scanner to look at liver metastasis, where the cancer spreads to the liver. And it's safe and effective. In fact, it's so safe that it can be used in patients with poor kidney function who are at risk of deadly side effects from all the products that are available on the market today. So we're entering into a market of $350 to $500 million where there's no product solution today. And there's a well-defined need. It's something that the clinicians see every day. We've discussed the phase 3 design of the study with the FDA. We have, based on that discussion, we have a plan for the study, and I will share that with you later. We plan to enroll patients in 2019, and we believe that the chances of success of that study is significantly higher than in most other phase 3 development programs. The other asset we have is Oncoral. It's based on a well-known cancer-killing molecule, irinotecan, that is used in clinical practice today. It's an infusion. Patients go and sit for hours in the hospital to get their infusion with irinotecan today. We're doing it in a tablet, so the patient can take the tablet at home. We also believe, and that's supported by evidence in the medical literature, that by giving small doses every day, the patient will get enough drug so that they will treat the cancer, but they will not get this massive dose that they get by sitting several hours in an infusion chair in the hospital. So from a quality of life perspective, from a convenience perspective, from a safety perspective, we think there are tremendous opportunities. We're developing Oncoral for gastric cancer treatment. It's an orphan indication in Europe and the US. We've just completed the phase 1 trial, and we will present data later this month, actually. So the people driving this is, I'm leading the team. I've been CEO of the company for 4 years, and prior to that, I spent more than 15 years investing in biotech companies, both in the public market and in private companies as a venture capitalist. I'm very proud of the team that has very senior experience in this field, and one of the most recent additions is Carl, our Chief Medical Officer. Carl joined us from Wilson Therapeutics, where he was most recently Chief Medical Officer, leading the development of their treatment for Wilson's disease until the company was acquired by Alexion for $855 million. Prior to that, he has orphan drug development experience from Genzyme and Sanofi, so really a capacity to the team. In addition to the management team, we have a strong board with very seasoned people. If we focus on the oncology and the operational experience, we have Peter, formerly executive management member of Pharmacia, long experience and also on the board of a number of prominent biotech companies. Bo Jesper Hansen, former, he built up a CEO, Swedish Orphan, that later became Sobi, and where he was chairman. And Hans Meyer, who was leading the diagnostic imaging unit at Bayer. Bayer is the world leader in imaging drugs. And I'm very proud that Hans wanted to join our board, invest some of his money in shares in Ascelia Pharma. I see that as a huge vote of confidence in our ability to move forward. So I'm going to switch gears now, go through Mangoral. So first of all, I want to define the problem that we solve. So liver metastasis is a huge problem in cancer treatment today. This is a very ugly image of a very unfortunate patient, huge liver metastasis. Liver metastases are very common. In many of the major cancer types, such as colon cancer, breast cancer, more than 70% of patients will develop liver metastasis through the course of their disease. That's huge. But also in gastric cancer, lung cancer, other cancer types, cancer spreads to the liver. And in many cases, the liver is one of the first sites of metastasis. And it's also one of the most frequent organs for metastasis, where cancer spreads to. And that's why it's important, because in most cases, patients do not die from their original tumor. They do not die from the colon cancer or the breast cancer. They die from the liver metastasis. And that's why it's so important to find them and do something about them. So the way the clinical practice works today is, first, you need to define the problem. You need to find out whether does this patient have liver metastasis. The way to do that today is by doing an imaging procedure. For liver metastasis, liver MRI with an injection of a gadolinium-based imaging drug, that's the best method for detecting liver metastasis. So once the doctors have that image, then they look at the images, the oncologist, the radiologist, the surgeon, they discuss what are the options. They can do surgery, they can do localized therapy where they fry the metastases or freeze them or any kind of things, and they have systemic drug therapy. They use that either one on its own or in combination. So what is the outcome on patient treatment? Well, it turns out, and that would be the echo of the story that Imanovia just told, early accurate detection is paramount in the treatment of cancer patients. Really. That really affects big time the outcome. And one example here is from a study where they took two comparable groups of patients. One patient group got standard of care, best drug treatment they could have. The other group of patients got surgery, they cut away the metastasis, and then they got the same types of drugs. 5 years later, they did the count on how many patients were still alive. The patients who got surgery, almost half of them were alive after 5 years. That's massive in metastatic cancer. Only 6% of those who only got drug therapy. So this is one example. There are many other studies, and therefore, doctors want to do imaging as early as possible to get an accurate map where the cancer has spread to the liver, because then they know that if it's detected early, they can do surgery and they can get the patient to the high survival rate. That's important. The best method, MRI with a gadolinium-based drug, is the best that you can do for the patients, except that it's not safe in all patients. The patients where the kidney is not working very well, they cannot flush out the gadolinium. Gadolinium is a toxic heavy metal, so you need to flush it out. When the kidneys are not working, the flushing out mechanism is very, very slow. And that causes what is called nephrogenic systemic fibrosis, a devastating and potentially deadly fibrosis of the skin, joints, inner organs, and there is no effective treatment. So as a consequence, the authorities around the world have put in black box warnings on all the gadolinium products, that these can cause these devastating conditions, and that the doctors should screen for signs of poor kidney function. And it also shows for this patient population with poor kidneys and cancer, there's no other safe alternative. There's no product for them, so the best they can get is an unenhanced MRI. So Mangoral, we are developing a non-gadolinium MRI enhancing drug. So a patient referred for a MRI scan today, they will be assessed on their kidney function. So if the kidney function is good, they will get a gadolinium drug, it will be flushed out quickly, and they will have a good image. But the problem that we're attacking are the patients with a poor kidney function. They don't have the opportunity to flush it out, and they risk NSF, so they're getting an MRI without an imaging drug. They will miss some metastasis, they will have an inaccurate diagnosis, and the treatment decisions by the doctors based on this flawed information will be incorrect, and the outcome will be poor. So for this patient population, we have Mangoral. This is plug and play. The doctors already do the assessment of this kidney function, and they are left with patients where they cannot deliver the optimal care. So Mangoral, it's a very efficient enhancement of the healthy liver cells. They become white. The metastases are by definition not liver cells, so they will stay black. By definition, there's no risk of nephrogenic systemic fibrosis because that's a disease that is only linked to gadolinium exposure. We have no gadolinium, no risk of that. It's also very safe. The patient drinks Mangoral, goes into the liver, and then the liver protects the body. It's a natural mechanism. And then it sends through the bile ducts the Mangoral product back into the intestine So when we measure the blood levels of manganese in the patients, we can hardly see any detection. So very easy to use. When I meet with doctors, nurses at hospitals, and they hear about the product, manganese, the workflow and how it's used in clinical practice, they immediately see how easy it would be for them to adopt it in clinical practice. So they would like it. It's faster scanner time, which is really one of the most important topics in radiology. So now I'm going to give you an example from one of our clinical studies. Here you see an actual T1 image. It's a sort of cross-section. What you can see here, that is the liver. At least the radiologist would be able to tell us that. And also, these black dots that you can see there are blood vessels and bile ducts. This is the standard of care in this patient population. And the radiologist evaluating this found no metastasis. So then the patient got manganese. And you can see here that all of a sudden, it's white. That's because, as mentioned, manganese goes into all the healthy liver cells. And on the MRI scan, they become white. You can also see here something that is clearly depicted, very clear delineation. That's a metastasis. That was not visible over here. And it's not just because of the image quality on the PowerPoint. This is what is also in the real-life study. So this has a tremendous impact on the survival. So we go back and think about how is it that the doctors are treating cancer patients. They look at the liver metastasis, and if there are no liver metastasis, then they focus only on the primary tumor. So based on this information, the doctors would have said, dear patient, you're lucky. You do not have an aggressive tumor. It's not spreading to the liver or other organs. So we only treat your primary tumor, and then you will be in good shape. Problem is, there is a metastasis. And in this example, it's in the periphery of the liver. It's something that most likely would be able to be cut away by surgery. And then this patient would, after 5 years, would have 46% chance of being alive instead of the 6%. So this is really what manganese does. Allow doctors to make the right treatment decision and allow them to do what they do very well, help patients with cancer with all the tools that they have available. And this is where manganese is very effective. We completed 6 clinical trials. I'm not going to go through in detail, but the very consistent picture and the conclusion of that is that it's safe, it's effective, and we did not identify any safety concerns. Based on we presented all this data, and based on that, we have a plan based on the FDA feedback. We will do a phase 3 study in 200 patients. We will look for diagnostic efficacy. And one of the very important conclusions from that meeting is we will compare manganese with unenhanced. So we will need to show basically that the radiologists can detect more with manganese than they can do without. That's something where we found a very significant difference in all of our clinical studies. We feel very strongly that we will be successful in this. We're also doing the evaluation. We're doing this in a number of hospitals in US, Europe, and Asia. We will have 3 radiologists who will be trained experts in looking at these images, so we want to make sure that they are very qualified, and reduce the bias from which radiologist was reading it at which hospital. So we bring all the information together, they read it, minimize variation. That's one of the things I've learned in my many years in life sciences, that in clinical studies you need to minimize variation, and by this study design we can do that. One other point that is really, really important is that each patient will be their own control. This is not a randomized study. Typically you do randomized studies, but in this study we do not need to do that. Each patient will be their own control. So they will have the image here, the radiologist will evaluate that, and then we will do on the same patient, on the same liver. So there will not be any difference between the total number of metastases in the 2 studies. Again, from a statistical perspective, that's tremendous. 72-hour follow-up, very low dropout rate expected. So compared to many studies where you need to follow patients for long times, you lose patient to follow-up. So we have a good team internally. We're working closely with Dr. Kokon Shamsi, who is one of the world leaders in development of medical imaging drugs. When he was at Bayer, he was heading clinical development of North America, and he was involved in 7 FDA approvals of medical imaging drugs, including 1 specifically for the liver. So he has deep expertise here. Kokon is not a practicing radiologist anymore, but we have built a very strong network of some of the best radiologists in Europe and US, some of the best hospitals, and we meet with them on a regular basis. And they are very, very excited about Mangoral. And in fact, 9 of them have written letters to the FDA or the EMA stating this product, Mangoral, really fulfills an unmet medical need in this patient population. And we have nothing good for them. And we are giving these patients suboptimal care. So we have a tremendous market opportunity. So 280,000 patients in Europe, US, and Japan fit into our target market, and there's nothing out there for them. The product is useful both for diagnosis, initial diagnosis, when the patient first is diagnosed, but we're also able to monitor response to treatment. So when patients are giving drugs worth $10,000, $20,000 per patient per month, severe side effects, the doctors want to make sure that the drugs are actually working in killing the tumor. How do they do that? They take a picture. Then they measure, has the tumor grown, is it stable, or has it shrunk? They need to do a scan, and Mangoral is well suited for that. And also after the patient becomes hopefully disease-free, there's also always the risk of recurrence, so that 2-3 years later, the cancer may appear again. And there you need to do scans at a bit longer intervals to make sure that if it comes back, that they can see it early and they can treat it aggressively. The other point is pricing. We have done a very extensive work on validating the commercial opportunity. We've spoken to more than 25 health insurers, healthcare payers in both Europe and US, private and public. We presented Mangoral, we told them the benefits, what it makes a difference for how they can treat the patients. And they immediately understood the value we provide. They can see that by early detection, they can make the right treatment decisions, and that will be highly cost effective for them. So based on that feedback, we are very confident in this $350 to $500 million opportunity. Again, Mangoral is the only product there. One thing that has come recently is the fact that in patients that get gadolinium, even with normal kidney function, so the gadolinium is flushed out quickly, some of that gadolinium accumulates in the brain. And gadolinium is a toxic heavy metal, so that's obviously not something any of us would like. And as a consequence, there are some hearings and expert meetings, and a lot of work is still ongoing. The authorities are requesting the gadolinium manufacturers to do a lot of follow-up research. But they have added additional warnings, not only for the kidney problem, but also that for all patients, some of that gadolinium may accumulate in the brain. The European health authorities actually took the decision to, as preemptive, to pull away 3 products from the market. So no side effects have been clearly identified from the gadolinium brain accumulation, but it's something that the whole field will look a lot into at this point. If we're looking from a commercial perspective, this is more than 8 million patients in that in the all-comer population. Our focus, that's how we are doing the development, that's where we're going to launch the product, that's where we're going to set the price, is for the 280,000. That's a $350 to $500 million market. So this is obviously a tremendous opportunity if something happens there. The other asset we have is Oncoral, which is this tablet formulation of irinotecan. It's a tablet, the patient takes it at home, and it's based on irinotecan, which is effective in killing cancer cells. We think it has the potential to be used safely and effectively together with other cancer types, cancer drugs, and used in combination, because cancer treatment today and for many years have been combination 2 or 3 drugs at the same time. And when you add these very toxic drugs on top of each other, then you get a very toxic cocktail. We think Oncoral has a good opportunity to be part of a very efficacious and tolerable cocktail. So there are irinotecan products on the market today. So they're both intravenous, so they're given by infusion. There's Camtosar, an old Pharmacia product. And then there's Onivide, which is an improved formulation of irinotecan that deals a little bit with some of the drawbacks of Camtosar, but it's still an injectable product. We're developing Oncoral for gastric cancer, where there's nothing these are not approved for gastric cancer in Europe and US. And it's an orphan condition, so it's a development path there that is manageable for a company of our size. And we know that irinotecan is approved for the treatment of gastric cancer in Japan. Not in Europe, not in US, but in Japan. Based on the data, we think that by doing these studies in Europe and in the US, we can get Oncoral approved in gastric cancer. And we think the likelihood of getting that is quite significant. What is also very important is we get a lot of very positive feedback from the clinicians. They really like to see a tablet formulation, how that can ease the quality of life for patients, how it can ease the way that they can treat them. So very strong feedback from the doctors, the ones that are treating the patients. Just quickly here on, why is this really interesting? This is an improved formulation of chemotherapy. Why is that attractive? Well, last year, Ipsen acquired Onivyde, the other product, an injectable, for more than $1 billion. So this has certainly been a very competitive process on acquiring that asset. And we think Oncoral has the potential to be even better. So we think this validates a very attractive opportunity for Oncoral. And we look forward to presenting some of our data from the phase 1. We will present from the part A of the phase 1 study. We will present that for the European Society for Medical Oncology here in less than 2 weeks from now. That will be where we give Oncoral on its own. Then next year we will present data from the part B of the study, where we give Oncoral together with another tablet chemotherapeutic agent. It's a Roche product, a Xeloda, that had 1.3 billion Swiss franc in revenue before it went off patent. So this is clearly a tremendous opportunity. So to summarize, just a little bit sort of perspective on what we've done here recently. In May, we raised 60 million. Vator was very helpful in that process. Since then, we've got the Oncoral patent granted in Europe, granted in the US. We will present data from the part A in this. We completed the study and we'll present it soon. And then we strengthened the team, especially by bringing Carl on board and tapping his experience. So some of the key activities that you can expect to hear from us soon is that we will start the phase 3 study, enrolling patients in the phase 3 study next year. And towards the end of 2020, we will have the top-line results. Based on that, we should be able to file for market approval. Oncoral, we will present data, as mentioned at ESMO, next year for the combination, and then we'll be doing the preparations for the phase 2. We will also, to finance all this, we are planning an IPO in the beginning of next year, and looking very much forward to that process. Final slide. The way we build value, the way we build shareholder value in the company is we have the near-term opportunity, late stage, low risk, monopoly product of Mangoral, get it through phase 3, and make it one of the top-selling imaging drugs available. On Oncoral, very attractive opportunity for using combination cocktails for treatment of gastric cancer, and clearly a very big market interest in that field. And once we've successfully delivered on some of those activities, we will look to acquire additional clinical stage assets that fit into the strategy, where it really makes a difference to a patient segment in the orphan oncology space, and where we can create tremendous value. So thank you very much. Be happy to take a couple of questions.
Great.